There's something haunting about a person's final words, especially when those words leave behind more fear than comfort. While some go peacefully with whispers of love or hope, others leave us with phrases so disturbing, so cryptic, or so cold that they echo long after death. These words, spoken in the final seconds of life, capture raw human emotion, rage, terror, regret, and sometimes, pure evil. History has preserved some of these final utterances, and they continue to disturb us not only for what they said, but how they said it. Imagine standing beside someone moments before death, only to hear a confession, a curse, or a warning that sends chills down your spine. Some were criminals, others were victims, and some were icons, but all of them faced the same ending, and chose to leave us with unforgettable words. In this video, we're diving into the 10 most disturbing last words ever recorded. Some will make you question humanity. Others will make you pause and reflect on what really matters in life. And one or two may leave you looking over your shoulder tonight. This isn't fiction, these are real people, real words, and real moments in history. Stay until the end, because the final entry may be the most unsettling of them all, a statement whispered in the face of death that still puzzles historians and sends shivers down spines. Let's begin. Karl Panzram, hurry it up, you Hoosier bastard. I could hang a dozen men while you're screwing around. Karl Panzram was one of the most remorseless serial killers in American history. Before his execution in 1930, he confessed to killing over 20 people and committing countless other crimes. When he was led to the gallows, the executioner fumbled slightly with the noose. That's when Panzram lashed out with his last words, laced with rage and dark sarcasm. His choice of words reflected a man who rejected remorse until his final breath. There was no plea for forgiveness, no reflection on what he'd done, only venom and mockery. Panzram viewed the system and his captors with disdain, and he wanted his last moment to show it. His executioner, visibly shaken, finished the job. But Panzram's words have remained infamous, a brutal reminder of how deeply hatred can embed itself in a person. To this day, those who read his final statement remember it as one of the coldest and most aggressive ever recorded. James French, how's this for your headline? French fries. James French, convicted of murder, was the last person to be executed in Oklahoma by electric chair in 1966. Always known for his morbid sense of humor, French had a disturbing obsession with being remembered. Moments before his execution, he turned to the press and delivered a final line designed for shock value. He quipped, "How's this for your headline? French fries." It was a gruesome pun on his own death, and it left reporters stunned. The remark wasn't just tasteless, it exposed a chilling desire for attention and death. French had spent years manipulating the legal system to ensure his execution made headlines, and he succeeded. His last words weren't cries of innocence or sorrow, they were a twisted punchline. Peter Curtin, tell me, after my head is chopped off, will I still be able to hear, at least for a moment, the sound of my own blood gushing from the stump of my neck? Known as the Vampire of Dusseldorf, Peter Curtin was a German serial killer and sexual predator responsible for at least 9 murders in the 1920s. Before his execution by guillotine in 1931, he asked a question so grotesque, it stunned the prison staff. He wanted to know if he could still hear his own blood after being decapitated. The question wasn't scientific curiosity, it was a final display of sadism. Curtin's crimes had involved drinking his victim's blood, and his fascination with death and gore was evident until the end. The officials didn't respond. They didn't have to. His head was swiftly severed, ending one of the most horrific chapters in German criminal history. But his words, full of bloodlust, remain among the most disturbing ever uttered before execution. Aileen Wuornos, I'll be back, like Independence Day, with Jesus. June 6th, like the movie, Big Mothership and all. I'll be back. Aileen Wuornos, one of the most notorious female serial killers in the United States, was executed by lethal injection in 2002. Her case gained global attention, not only for the killings but for her erratic behavior during trials and interviews. Her last words were just as unsettling as her life. She referenced sci-fi films, aliens, and the return of Jesus, all wrapped in a cryptic, almost delusional statement. Her declaration, "I'll be back," sounded less like farewell and more like a threat. Psychologists have long debated Wuornos's mental health, but regardless of interpretation, her words added a layer of dread to her execution. To many, her final sentence felt like the beginning of a horror film, not the end of a life. George Opel, well, gentlemen, you are about to see a baked apple. Convicted murderer George Oppel was executed in New York's electric chair in 1928. Known for his dry wit and contempt for authority, Oppel used his last breath to make a pun, and it was anything but comforting. He said, "Well, gentlemen, you are about to see a baked apple." The guards reportedly laughed nervously, unsure how to respond. While the pun might seem humorous on the surface, it masks the horrifying reality of death by electrocution. Oppel was about to endure one of the most painful methods of capital punishment, and he chose to turn it into a grotesque joke. That bizarre detachment has made his words infamous. Humor at the gallows can be chilling, especially when it hides a deeper darkness. John Wayne Gacy, kiss my ass. John Wayne Gacy, the infamous killer clown, murdered at least 33 young men in the 1970s. His trial and conviction horrified the world. But his final words, short, crude, and defiant, only added to his monstrous legacy. When asked if he had any last words before his 1994 execution, Gacy snarled, "Kiss my ass." No apology, no remorse, not even acknowledgement of his crimes. For the families of his victims, it was a final insult, a last show of arrogance from a man who had already caused unspeakable pain. His execution brought closure to some, but his parting words revealed a soul consumed by ego and cruelty. Thomas J. Grasso, "I did not get my spaghetti-os, I got spaghetti. I want the press to know this." Thomas Grasso was executed in 1995 for 2 murders. While his crimes were horrific, it was his final complaint that shocked the public. He was angry about his last meal. Grasso had requested spaghetti-os, but received regular spaghetti. His last words were, "I did not get my spaghetti-os, I got spaghetti. I want the press to know this." It was a bizarre, petty grievance in the face of death. But beneath the absurdity lies something darker, a complete detachment from the gravity of his situation. Rather than confront his crimes or express remorse, Grasso's final act was to file a culinary complaint. Disturbing in its own absurdity. Gary Gilmore, let's do it. In 1977, Gary Gilmore became the first person executed in the United States after the reinstatement of the death penalty. Facing a firing squad, Gilmore uttered 3 simple words that would echo into pop culture: "Let's do it." The phrase was chilling in its calmness. There was no resistance, no delay. Just acceptance, or possibly eagerness. Nike later adapted the phrase into their iconic slogan. But for those who know the origin, "Let's do it" carries a much darker tone. Gilmore's final statement was disturbing in its coolness, a man stepping into death with a phrase that sounded more like he was starting a race. Sir Walter Raleigh, strike, man, strike. Sir Walter Raleigh, once a favorite of Queen Elizabeth I, fell from grace and was executed in 1618 under suspicion of treason. When the executioner hesitated with the axe, Raleigh, unflinching, urged him forward. "Strike, man, strike," he shouted. His final words revealed a shocking calmness, and even impatience, in the face of death. While Raleigh's bravery has been admired, the command carries a disturbing undertone. It's the voice of a man ready for the end, not begging for mercy, but demanding it. His last words remain etched in history as a chilling example of dignity and despair at the chopping block. Adolf Eichmann, "I'll leap into my grave laughing, because the feeling that I have 5 million people on my conscience gives me extraordinary satisfaction." One of the architects of the Holocaust, Adolf Eichmann showed no remorse at his 1962 execution in Israel. His last words reflected a man entirely at peace with mass murder. In fact, he seemed proud of it. His parting statement, cold, unapologetic, and monstrous, was broadcast around the world. Eichmann's words didn't just disturb. They enraged. They confirmed, even in death, the inhumanity of his ideology. There was no redemption, no regret, only smug satisfaction and genocide. His final words stand as one of the most horrifying declarations in modern history. And they remain a warning of what happens when cruelty is normalized and conscience is abandoned. Last words can define a legacy, or expose a soul. While some offer peace or wisdom, others rip open wounds. The final words we explored today reveal the darkness that can live inside a person until their final breath. These weren't just quotes. They were messages, to the world, to their victims, to history itself. Some aimed to horrify. Others tried to be clever. But all left an impression impossible to forget. What someone chooses to say in their last moments says everything about who they were. It reveals what they fear, what they regret, or what they want us to remember. And sometimes, it makes us question the limits of human cruelty and madness. If this video gave you chills, like and subscribe for more content that uncovers the unsettling side of history. And let us know in the comments, which last words disturbed you the most.